Om Shanti and welcome back to Light of Knowledge International. We have a very interesting topic for discussion today. Being with yourself. What does it mean to be with myself? Is it just that I take a time out and sit by myself? And then what do I do? I mean, do I ask myself any questions? Or is there more to it? To help us answer these questions and more, we have a very special guest with us in our Godlywood studio, Sister Manda, who is the director of the Global Retreat Center in UK. Sister Manda has been with the Brahmakumaris for the past 38 years, and she is gifted, a gifted speaker who's able to share the knowledge of Brahmakumaris in a very simple and easy to understand manner. Sister Manda, we are so pleased to have you with us here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Sister, we're going to start off by asking you, when we say that I need to sit with myself, I'm assuming that the prerequisite for that is I'm alone and in a quiet place. But what happens is, for a lot of people, that brings the feeling of loneliness. So how do we differentiate between being alone and being or not being lonely?
This is a very important aspect, I think, in today's world, especially when we are so bombarded with information, we are bombarded with noise and sounds and sights that are so distracting for us. And so we are constantly pulled outside of ourselves.
Yes.
And so for me, what it really means to be with myself means to be, first of all, as you say, to take time to be away from some of these distractions, if you can possibly do that, to have a little space where the distractions are not going to come to you.
Okay.
And so you create a little space where you can be quiet, you can be by yourself, and all the sights and sounds that so quickly take us to them are not present for us.
Right.
And so I think it's important to be able to do that. But when we talk about being with ourselves, it does mean to be aware of being introspective.
Okay.
To be aware of being in solitude. And actually some of these words in Hindi are very beautiful words. Ekant. Ekant means to go into the depth of one. And when we're talking about being in our own company, then we're actually talking about going into the depth of ourselves. And so in English, you might translate that as solitude. And people are a little bit afraid of that.
Exactly.
And the fear is because we think that, well, if I be quiet, if I'm on my own, in a sense, unconscious and awareness, unconscious knowing is that, what am I going to find inside myself?
Right. And I've noticed that a lot of times, because of this fear factor, people will either turn the TV on or they get on the phone and start talking to people. Because like you said, we have these inner demons which we don't want to confront.
Yeah.
So what is the process? How do we get past that?
Yeah. It's interesting that you should say that. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she was telling me how her husband, even though when there are two of them, if they stop doing something, he switches on the radio. The moment he wakes up, he switches on the radio.
Right.
Even when the television is off, he switches on the radio. So that there's some kind of a noise that, in a sense, makes you feel like there's something else present with you.
Right.
And so I think that first and foremost, one has to have this deep desire to have this space, to create sacred space for one's own self. And then to recognize that actually there is a lot of beauty inside ourselves. But one thing I would say is that when you said the inner demons, I wouldn't refer to them as demons.
Okay.
They're only aspects of my own self.
Okay.
Because if I think of them as demons, then I'm afraid of them.
Okay.
And I feel that I can't confront them.
Okay.
They're much too bigger than myself.
Okay.
But all of us have this incredible, beautiful side of us. And when we become quiet, when we create spaces between our thoughts, when we can create spaces between our thoughts and our words, when we can create spaces between what we think and what we see, then this space actually is a very, very sweet, soft, and beautiful space.
You know, I have always had, what should I say, not problem is not the right word, but confusion. Because a lot of times, you know, this word inner space is used. And many times I would ask myself, like, what is this inner space? Because the first thing, you know, a lot of books or self-help books says, be quiet and create your own inner space. And I'm like, what is inner space? So if you could please describe that a little bit.
Yeah. So for me, this inner space is the inner world of my thoughts and my feelings, basically, to begin with. In the sense that my feelings, my thoughts, my emotions, there is a space inside of us that actually creates the space outside of ourselves also. And so when you stop, first of all, you are able to be with your own thoughts. Instead of thoughts jumping outside of you, when you can say, okay, let me go inside myself. What's going on inside what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And why am I thinking what I'm thinking? Can I possibly recognize the power of my own thoughts and begin to create thoughts deliberately? Normally we think that thoughts just come. Thoughts don't just come.
Because that's what most of us, if you ask, if you take a survey, 99% of us would say thoughts just come. But that's not true?
That's not true. Thoughts don't just come. Thoughts are generated. Thoughts are generated by us. But it's now become such an unconscious process because they're fed. Thoughts are fed by our past experiences. Thoughts are fed by our desires. Thoughts are fed by our expectations. Thoughts are fed by our past experiences. And it's those experiences that enable the thoughts to emerge. So when I sit down quietly and I choose to observe my thoughts, firstly, just observing, saying, okay, here's a thought. What is this thought that I'm having? Why am I having this thought that I'm having? Or the other side of it also is that can I deliberately create a thought and say, well, I want to create a thought of peace. I want to create a thought about my attitude becoming positive, that I want to be able to perceive what's going on outside in a good way, in a positive way. You know, it's this whole thing, is the glass half full or half empty? And so that's my perception. The glass is there. You can either think of it as half empty, and so you want to fill it, or you can say it's half full, and so I can drink it. I can drink it. And it's the same inside our own selves too. When we look at our thoughts, it's a question of what is the kind of thought am I having, and what does this thought make me feel? Thoughts are a seed to our actions. Thoughts are seeds to our feelings and emotions too. And so when you consistently have a particular type of thought, then that thought will change into a feeling. And then that thought will eventually change into an emotion when it comes up with a great deal of force as a reaction to something that's happening outside of me. So to be with your own self, firstly, to be quiet, to just give yourself permission to not have to engage. Because again, today I was speaking about this, that our addiction to action, our addiction to doing, and sometimes it's necessary, or many times it's necessary to do it, but many times it's not necessary to do something. And so our addiction to be out there, engaged all the time, in itself pulls us outside of ourselves. And so to be with your own self means to commit time to be in your own company.
At this point, I wanted to ask you, you talked about the inner space creates the outer space, and then you explained to us the process of how the thoughts finally become action. Is that what you mean by the inner space creates the outer space, that eventually our thoughts become actions?
That is true too. But the other aspect I also mean is that whatever thoughts and feelings I have, they're a vibration. They're an energy. And whatever energy I create as a result of my own inner world and inner feelings, I attract the same to myself. So it's if I create an energy of positivity through positive thoughts, good feelings of good intentions towards other people, then it's natural that the same will come to me because other people will have the same thoughts about me because I'm having good thoughts and positive thoughts about them. But I think the other thing to remember when we want to go into this inner space is that human nature is intrinsically good. It's intrinsically positive.
So we have to believe in the goodness of everyone.
We have to believe, first of all, in the goodness of our own selves.
Okay.
When I believe in the goodness of my own self, then I can actually give myself permission to go into that. And for me, understanding of Rajyoga meditation from the Brahma Kumaris point of view, for us, intrinsically, the understanding that all of us are spiritual beings, we're souls, and that the original nature of human souls is peace, is love, is joy, is wisdom, is beauty. And when I actually understand this, this understanding is essential, I think, in order to appreciate being in your own company too. So when you understand this, you're willing to give yourself permission to explore this inside yourself. And so as you take time, you kind of begin to think about this. Well, actually, is peace my nature? If that is the case, why am I not feeling peaceful?
Right.
Why is it that I get angry? Why is it that I get upset? I basically forget that my nature is peace. And when I forget that, then I see something outside of myself and I jump into that and I lose my own peace.
Okay, this is, you're explaining it so beautifully, truly, and in such a way that I'm sure even our viewers out there are able to, understand this conversation. I was wondering, from what you're explaining to me, like going within and talking about me being a peaceful soul, is this anything different from the meditation process, or is it the same?
Right. It's an aspect of meditation.
Okay.
I think it's a first step into meditation.
Okay.
Also because when we talk about meditation here in the Brahma Kumaris, we're actually thinking about meditation as a very natural thing.
Okay.
And I believe that we all do it. Any form, when you give attention to anything in a very focused way, it's a form of meditation. It's just that we seem to give attention to those things that take us outside of ourselves. So yes, absolutely. This is the first step into meditation where you just sit quietly, first of all. Just take a few deep breaths. And as you take a few deep breaths, you become conscious of your internal energy. And as you become conscious of this internal energy, you sense the energy visibly change, I feel. Okay. As the moment I observe my breath, my energy changes. I become calm. I become very peaceful. And then I begin to, so this is how I feel. And so I then choose to create thoughts on the basis of what I now understand to be true about myself. That I'm a peaceful being. I'm a peaceful spirit, a peaceful soul. And whatever is happening outside of me, I don't have to lose this condition of mine.
Sister, it's, you explained so well that our inside and our outside, like we should not be affected or influenced by the outside. At this point, may I ask you, we are within ourselves for, say, 10 minutes. And then our chores, our job, it calls us and we have to, come out of that stage. How do we bring that same stage into our work? Or it could be something as simple as cooking or doing your laundry. How do we bring that into that inner space, into that outer work as well?
Well, I think the first thing is that don't expect miracles. After trying once or twice, it's only just getting into the taste of it. And so I think that it does require consistent practice as well. But we also have to be deliberate in the sense that when situations that could potentially cause frustration or upset, then I have to say, take a pause for a moment and say, okay, what do I do here? Do I give myself the space, give myself permission to just stop for a second or two and reevaluate my response or my reaction rather, because our tendency seems to be that we jump. Into reaction.
Yes.
And so that also is a practice that we have to develop with time. And so yes, the first step is to start. But as we continue to do this, then we're able to bring the awareness of that in time. Because we're so out of practice more than anything else. But also we're so attached to our ideas and our perceptions and our thinking and our opinions that if somebody doesn't agree with us, then
we just blow up.
Then we blow up.
Yeah.
But I think there's a deeper understanding that has to be present in that sphere. Everybody is different. I can't possibly make anyone like myself, or I want them to be like me, or I want them to respond in the way that I want them to respond. That's never going to happen. And so there's this deeper understanding that we also need to develop at the same time as having this practice of being quiet. But this practice enables us to develop power. It enables us to develop clarity. It enables us to have this, for me, this is so important, this space between thoughts, between my thoughts and my reactions to what's happening outside of me.
Listening to you, I'm sitting here and that's giving me hope that, it is possible for me to respond and not react.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, many times when you talk about, sitting with yourself, people say that maybe the first quality that you have to think of is loving yourself. That's where you start, and then you go further with the other aspects. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, that also is a big topic, I think, that with time, it's a very subtle thing. We've developed subtle dislikes about ourselves or subtle disapprovals of ourselves, or actually even expectations or wanting to live our lives in the way that others want us to live them. And we don't even realize that this is how we think about our lives. Am I doing the way society expects me to do it? Or will I be approved by what I do and how I dress and how I look and how I speak and what my social status is? And if I'm not like that, then will the society reject me or will disapprove of me? And so these are the subtle ways in which we then turn it around and we have disapproval of our own selves. And so when you talk about loving yourself, I equate this with this, that I feel that I need to live my life in the way that I should, inverted commas, live. But there is no such thing as should. And there's a lot of pain and sorrow and suffering that's accumulated inside of us from our own past negative experiences, which are sometimes inevitable in life. But we suppress our emotions from a very young age, things that happen to us that we are not able to evaluate, things that happen to us that we don't understand. So when those strong emotions come, we suppress them. And those suppressed emotions actually become lethal for our own selves. And so those turn into dislike and displeasure towards our own selves. But then actually we project it by having disapproval and dislikes for other people. So when I look around me and I don't like this and I don't like that and I don't like the other, actually I have to turn around and look at my own self and think, well, is this how I think about my own self too? And 9.9 out of 10, it's probably the case that I'm thinking about my own self in that way. And so then to turn this around, instead of saying, well, I mustn't think about that with other people, I first of all need to look at my own self. How do I disapprove of my own self? And that's where this whole aspect of loving yourself, accepting yourself, because every single human being actually, ultimately, and it starts with me, I'm a good being. I'm a spiritual being. And therefore, love, peace, and joy are my intrinsic nature. It's just that when I start to live my life on the basis of ego, which is really on the basis of the emptiness that exists inside my own self, then a life of falsehood begins.
Starts. Yeah, you've given a very beautiful understanding of, what we see outside is nothing but a reflection of what's within us. And, a lot of times this does happen. I used to wonder about this statement again. I used to read about this and I'm like, what does that mean? If, I'm, say, critical of a person, say about his appearance. So maybe that means that I'm not happy with my own appearance. And that, again, like you said, has come way back somewhere, maybe from childhood or maybe even from the previous births.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, previous birth, we don't know. Definitely that there's an influence of the previous birth. But in this birth, it's easy to identify because when you are very young, we're very vulnerable. We look up to our caregivers to support us and love us and take care of us. And let's face it, everybody themselves is in need of care and love and softness and kindness. And so our caregivers, if they've criticized us at a very young, when we're a very young age, when we need our caregivers to approve of us or guide us or show us care, show us love, when they in fact do the opposite, then those emotions actually remain buried inside of ourselves and we don't know how to deal with those emotions. So then we turn that around on ourselves and we create this negative feeling or belief about our own selves. And so when we're alone, when we're taking time to be with ourselves, we know that some of these things are going to come up. That I'm actually going to I'm going to have to face what's deeply latent inside my own self. And so then that's what we're afraid of. What will I do with that? How will I deal with that emotion when it comes up of pain or being let down or being hurt or whatever that might be? And so then we just say, okay, let's just fill our lives with noise and images and people and action. So there is no time to create that.
I also remember reading about this, that someone said that she would go visit with friends and family and try to pry in their lives so she wouldn't have to deal with her own life.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, this whole subject is very big. We are looking at it in a very short space of time, but it is. You can talk about this kind of thing for hours.
Forever,
And then, of course, to turn it around and create this sacred space inside yourself and be safe. Give care to your own self. Give kindness to your own self. I was recently involved in a mindful self-compassion workshop.
Mindful self-compassion. Okay. So being compassionate to yourself.
Yeah.
Mindfully. Yeah. Didi, we have had such a beautiful discussion today and you have given us clarity on so many aspects. And, like you said, this discussion could go on, but we do have time constraints and we would definitely like to have you back with us in the studio again and again. So we have a lot more questions coming your way. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Sister Manda has very beautifully explained to us the different aspects of being with yourself. One thing she talked about was you can start by sitting in a quiet place and just observe your thoughts. And the space between two thoughts is what you're looking for. Another thing she talked about was how our inner space creates the outer space. And I'm sure you have enjoyed this show as much as I have. We'll look forward to seeing you again in our next episode. Until then, take care and Om Shanti.